The black cliffs were truly a sight to behold, 350 meters tall. One of the original wonders of this world, here long before the first bacteria were introduced during minigrass terraforming. Gabriel knew this as a massive photo of the cliffs over 100 meters long, taken 5,000 years ago, showing them behind sterile purple seas under dull red skies. Now the cliffs were covered in greenery, flying animals soared overhead, and thousands of tourists walked close to the edge, prevented from falling through by a large fence. Close was a subjective term, though. Gabriel standing 1 meter from the edge was being, in Piss's words, a big baby boy. "Where'd your bag of sweets go?" Gabriel asked, looking at Piss's empty hands. She had pestered him and Nish for the past hour for sweets, and had barely had them 15 minutes. Gabriel swore if Pister dropped them over the cliff. "I gave them to that little boy who did not have any," Pister explained, pointing to a boy twice the size of Pister. "Sharing is caring," Pister added. Gabriel smiled, hugged her and said, "You're a good girl, Pister." She trilled and hugged Gabriel right back. Nish watched all this and did not understand what the matter with Gabriel was. Ever since that little mistake, he had been distant, just as he had been when they first met. He was just as polite as ever, maybe a little too much. After getting a glimpse of the real man, it felt wooden. Was he still feeling bad about what he had done? Sure, she had been surprised at the moment, but she was not bothered by it. Nish had asked him about it earlier, and he had assured her that nothing was wrong, and that he was just as over it as she was. Wanting to test this again, Nish approached him and asked, "You enjoying yourselves?" "Yeah, I want to fly," Nish explained for the 9th time. "Quite enjoyable," Gabriel replied flatly. Nish was beginning to worry she had done something. She had not been able to find anything during an internet search, but maybe it was a cultural thing, peculiar to that island he lived on. She felt the urge to ask him once more if anything was wrong, but she already knew the answer Gabriel would give. While she did not understand what, Nish was certain that she was at the centre of it, as his attitude to Pista remained unchanged. Pista was right. Gabriel needed to stop acting like such a baby. So maybe, possibly, he had a little bit of a crush. So what? It was perfectly natural. That whole proximity thing someone at work had mentioned once. It did not mean anything, just hormones. Nish was the first woman he had met that he found enjoyable to be around. In a week or so, everything was settled down. Gabriel cleared his throat and asked Nish, "Do Tofanda ever make their home on the sea cliffs?" Nish was taken aback. He had hardly said a word to her all morning, and now here he was, back to normal, as though nothing had happened. She was beginning to wish Eola was still here. She would have an explanation for this. "Yeah, there are a fair few seaside towns and cities, though there's no way I'm living in one," Nish explained, rubbing her antenna through her fingers. Gabriel nodded and then realized that natural cliffs must be in short supply, considering they were billions of Tofanda and Yersu. "What about cities and towns that aren't near natural high points? What are they like?" he asked. "Most of them are modelled after cliffs, generally. The best homes are in the middle, not too high and not at the bottom," Nish explained, relaxing now that Gabriel was slowly returning to his old self. Sitting on a nearby bench, Gabriel took the time to people-watch and got a drink. The cliffs were not quite as blatant with their tourism facilities as Habifru was. They were still there, just hidden under mounds of vegetation-covered soil. Not a bad idea, in Gabriel's opinion. Help maintain the illusion. "Excuse me?" someone asked. Gabriel looked to his right to see a Woku, their face just a few centimeters from his. "Yes," replied Gabriel, trying to keep himself under control. Once again, the unconscious sense of revulsion came, and Gabriel was sick of it. This was a problem he wanted solved. "You're Gabriel Radlu, yes?" the Woku asked. "Yes," Gabriel confirmed, this time forcing himself to look them in the eye. "Could I get a photo of you, please?" the Woku asked, holding up a rather expensive camera. Gabriel went quiet for long enough that everyone began wondering what he would say. "Okay," Gabriel replied quietly, more to his surprise than anyone else. On the cliff face, a Poropop was dutifully chipping away at the rock. Rather unremarkable compared to many of its neighbours, easily fitting in a human palm, shaped much like an adult cicada, with only a functioning mouth and a fair maw able to defend itself. The little alien was one of the hardiest animals on the planet. Native to Telocrypt Prime, a class 10H, the little insectoid continued the task of slowly scraping away the stone. Its muscular forearms and sharp barbs allowed it to gouge the rock. Though the animal could not claim all the credit, it was taking advantage of a naturally occurring crack. The Poropop merely enlarged it. The Poropop had reached sexual maturity this season, and this was his first borrow. As it was smaller than many of the other males, it could not take advantage of the pre-made burrow, nor challenge another male for theirs, hence why it was spending so much time and effort on making its own. The burrow would need to be big enough to accommodate the larger female he was hoping to woo, but small enough that she felt secure enough to lay her eggs. Not an easy task considering the medium and the Poropop lack of experience, but he still went about it with all the dedication of a master craftsperson. Not that the Poropop understood any of this. It had never questioned why it did anything, and never would. It did not have the mental acuity to do it. It, like all animals, merely acted, responded to genetic instinct, and the memories it had acquired through its life. There was something in this half-finished burrow, a strange rock that the Poropop simply could not shift, no matter how hard it tried. Instinct drove it on, however, and he worked his way around the obstruction. However, all his effort would be in vain, even if what was occurring above was not about to destroy all his hard work. No female would ever nest in such a burrow that was so asymmetrical. It was not unusual for a young male to fail in finding a mate. The Poropop ignored it, though, driven on by his instincts. The things above were making noise, but they were no threat to it. Sometimes food appeared when they were around. Gabriel's willingness to be photographed had set off a bit of a feeding frenzy. When he tried to be understanding, the number of requests began to wear his patience and aggravate his temper. He had gone away by saying he needed to do some human things. A partial lie, this was more of a Gabriel thing, but no doubt other humans would act the same way. There were over 11 billion of them. He grabbed onto the railing and started to rock it back and forth. Glancing behind, he could still see several people staring at him. If it had just been Nish and Pista, he would not care, but all those eyes burning into him sent horrible shivers down his spine. He was in no fit state to do this. What had ever possessed him to agree to that damn photo? He rolled the railing harder and harder, causing it to shake. A hissing croak came from below, and a young Poropop took the air. Gabriel leaned over the edge to see where it had come from, desperate for anything to take his mind off all those people. Then a loud cracking sound grabbed everyone's attention, and Gabriel found himself falling over the edge, along with the railing whose foundation had been compromised by that industrious little Poropop. Gabriel's reflexes reacted, and he grabbed hold of the railing, now only held in place by a single foundation. His fall was halted, but the sudden cessation of movement caused him to tear one of his shoulder muscles, and another reflex made Gabriel let go. One last scream, and Gabriel was gone. Nish's response was immediate. Before Gabriel had vanished from view, she was already running towards the cliff edge. Without a moment's hesitation, she leapt and fell after Gabriel. Streamlined into a dive, she could quickly catch the clumsy, tumbling Gabriel. Her brain also promptly calculated the time until they both reached the bottom. It was nothing logical, no mathematical equations. All Gabriel knew was that it would be impossibly close. Grabbing hold of Gabriel as tightly as she could, Nish unfurled her wings to their full glory. 6 meters from wingtip to wingtip. Beating them as hard as she could, they began to slow. Not by enough, though. This was going to be bad. Gabriel hit the sand with a muted thud and a crunch. He found it difficult to think. Gabriel was in shock over what had just happened. The fall had made him feel utterly helpless because he had been utterly helpless, a state he had not been in since he was a boy. If Nish hadn't... Nish... Gabriel slurred, looking down at the woman who had saved his life. Nish... Gabriel repeated, this time with a little more control over his tongue. She gave back a half-hearted groan before saying, and falling unconscious. Gabriel looked up, his attention grabbed by movement in his peripheral vision, and saw Pista, bounding down the sheer cliff face, leaping from ledge to ledge, with the sure-footedness a mountain goat would be jealous of. With one final leap, she landed, safely, if a little clumsily, next to him. Mummy, Gabriel, Mummy, Gabriel, Mummy, Gabriel, Pista cried, barely holding the buzzing at bay. Gabriel tried to get control of his breathing. Pista, be brave, Gabriel explained between gasps. Pista looked at him. Her face was the same inscrutable mask it had always been. Gabriel could pick up the signs, though. The drooping arms, the low antenna, the flat wings. She was terrified. With good cause. Get my PDA, Gabriel explained, tapping his side pocket. Call ambulance, he added. Pista clicked and took the PDA from his pocket, her hand shaking wildly. She knew what to do. Nish had taught her how to call an ambulance, and the teachers at school had done so as well. Holding the device up to her head, she waited for the ring to end. Hello? What emergency services do you require? A voice said to Pista. Ambulance! Pista screamed into the receiver. The operator wasted no time. Their job was simply to direct people, not deal with them. Ambulance service, a new voice said. I need an ambulance now, Pista said, her response automatic, drilled into her by all those safety seminars. What happened? The director asked, already in contact with the paramedics. The director already had the general location taken from the device used to contact them, but she needed specifics and the ambulance needed to be prepped based on species. As she waited for the caller's response, she realized they were at the Black Cliffs, so she requested the air ambulance instead. Mummy and Gabriel fell really far, and Mummy couldn't fly and Pista answered, the panic set in and the practice petering out. She'd been told to tell the ambulance people lots of important information, species, age, exact location and injuries, but that was a more challenging ask from a 14-year-old than just saying a 5-word sentence. Realizing who she was dealing with, the director changed her tone and asked, Is there a grown-up there? Mummy and Gabriel are hurt, Pista repeated, trying her hardest not to collapse into a puddle, trying her hardest to be just like Gabriel. Okay, where are you exactly? The Gabriel asked, keeping her voice as calm as possible. At the Black Cliffs, Pista explained. Look, sweetie, I need you to tell me exactly where you are so the ambulance doesn't waste time looking for you, the director said, hoping the child would understand. Pista went quiet, trying to think. We were at a sweet shop a little while ago. It had a big animal on the sign. Her VI quickly did a search and found just one match. Is the sun to the left or the right? Asked the director. Right, Pista replied. Good. Now, what are Mummy and Gabriel? The director inquired. With that last piece of information, the air ambulance could be sent, and be there in under 10 minutes. Mummy's a Tafanda and Gabriel's a human, Pista said, grateful for an easy answer. That Gabriel. She was sending an ambulance for that Gabriel, the director thought, as she saw the ambulance take off. The ambulance is on the way. What's your name? The director asked. Pista, she replied with a buzz. Okay, Pista, I need you to look at Mummy and Gabriel and tell me if they are awake, the director said, keeping her words as simple as possible. Gabriel's awake, I think. Mummy isn't, Pista replied. It was hard to tell with Gabriel. He was still moving, but he was not saying anything. She looked at Nish once more, and Pista realized what she had just said. Her mummy wasn't moving, and she nearly broke. He had not been lying idle. Gabriel had been attempting to calm himself. Difficult, but watching Pista try so hard gave him confidence. Taking one last breath, Gabriel held out his hand, still shaking, and told Pista, You can have me over now.